What's up, guys? Hope everybody's well. I want to show you a couple things about today's lesson. I'm starting here on OneNote. In the margin of today's OneNote handout, you'll see two windows with YouTube videos. Throughout the lesson, as I take you through the OneNote worksheet, I'll remind you a few times to pause, whether it's to answer questions, watch a video, or complete a reading. Quick note about OneNote. With all the people using digital media like OneNote, Google Classroom for learning from home right now, the high volume of traffic is causing it to work very slowly. I'm going to try something where I share all of the upcoming handouts to you tonight. If you remember, open up your OneNote tonight at like 8 o'clock when there's less people on for school, and a bunch of handouts will probably sync all at once. All right, that way you have them. I'm going to try to do that tonight, and maybe it'll make it easier for you to sync worksheets in the future. We're going to begin the lesson. I'm going to go over to PowerPoint. All right, so today's lesson aim is how did the election of 1800 change politics in America? Basically, today we're going to learn about the election of President Thomas Jefferson. All right, we'll get into him winning the election in a moment. I want you guys to begin with the do now. So pause my video and try to answer the 5 do now questions. Okay, welcome back. Hopefully you answered all the do now questions. Number 1, true or false, Jefferson and his supporters formed a political party called the Democratic Republicans. This one's a little tricky. The answer is true. If you wrote false because you thought his political party were called the Anti-Federalists, you're kind of right. The Anti-Federalists became known as the Democratic Republicans. That's why the answer is true. Their real political party name by the time Jefferson was elected was Democratic Republicans. Number 2, Jefferson felt that more political power should be given to states. The other correct answer would be people. Remember, Jefferson was anti-federalist, which means he was against. Anti means against. He was against a stronger federal government. He felt power should be given to the states. Number 3, what foreign nation did Jefferson favor forming an alliance with? The answer is France. This was a big reason for his disagreement with John Adams during Adams' presidency. Adams had problems with France. Jefferson was a friend of France. He had spent time there. He had worked as an ambassador with France. Adams was pro-British. Number 4, who was Jefferson's main political rival? As you learned yesterday, during Adams' presidency, Jefferson developed a rivalry with Adams. The other correct answer would be Hamilton. Jefferson, as leader of the Democratic Republicans, fought with many Federalists. The one he got along best with was Washington, but Adams and Hamilton were definitely political rivals of Jefferson's. Number 5 is very tough. Why did Jefferson favor a strict interpretation of the Constitution? A strict interpretation will come up later on this week. He wanted to limit the federal government's power. And so if the federal government must follow the Constitution very strictly, that will limit their power. All right, hopefully you did well on the do now. If not, hopefully my explaining it helps. Let's go to our intro question. You see some of our current and recent political candidates here on the screen. Imagine in November, the presidential election ends in a tie, meaning the electoral vote ends in a tie. What would happen if the electoral vote ended in a tie? Pause my video, think about that. We will discuss the correct answer. So the Electoral College vote ends in a tie. The Constitution says that the House of Representatives votes to choose the winner of the election. One of the reasons today's lesson is known as the Revolution of 1800, it was a huge, shocking election because of the tie and when the House of Representatives gets to choose the winner. All right, here's what I want you guys to do. On OneNote, I want you to watch this video. I'm going to pause and allow you to watch it. Go ahead. Okay, welcome back. So if you watched that video, Mr. Beat does a great job of summarizing the election of 1800. As I said before, he calls it the Revolution of 1800. It's sort of a peaceful revolution. You have, for the first time, a new political party winning the White House. You have a new president moving into the White House. Adams and Jefferson started out as friends, and by this point in their political careers, they've become enemies. The campaign leading up to the election was very nasty, with the candidates taking shots at each other, making fun of each other. Imagine if these guys had Twitter today in 2020. It would have gotten very ugly. In the video, you heard Mr. Beat refer to the Alien and Sedition Acts. Yesterday, during the John Adams lesson, we talked about how the Alien and Sedition Acts were a series of laws passed by the Federalists that really angered the Anti-Federalists. Jefferson's political party uses these laws to help beat Adams in the election. It was controversial, and a lot of Americans were scared of these stricter laws that gave the government more power. The election of 1800 really gets messed up because of the way they elected the president and vice president together on the same ballot. The political parties were trying to get their candidates elected to both president and vice president. Therefore, they're supposed to give all their votes to their guys. The Democratic Republicans messed up, and they forgot to leave one less vote for Aaron Burr. When Jefferson wins the election, Aaron Burr got as many electoral votes as him, so therefore the election winds up in the House of Representatives. Jefferson's going to wind up being chosen as president by the House of Representatives, and Aaron Burr is going to wind up being chosen as his vice president. This election is the beginning of the end for the Federalist Party. Adams was their last president in the White House. Washington and Adams were both Federalists. The political party will continue to be weakened in a couple of years during Jefferson's presidency when their future star presidential candidate is killed in a duel. Jefferson begins a long run of Democratic-Republican presidents, and it's really the first time in U.S. history that one party dominated politics for a number of decades. We're going to get into that over the next couple of weeks. All right, go to OneNote, and I want you guys to summarize this by reading on page 1, national news. Take a couple of minutes. I'll pause my video. You're going to do the reading and answer questions 1 and 2. Welcome back. Hopefully you did a good job on the reading and answered question 1 and 2. Let's go over them. Question 1, why did the House of Representatives have to decide the election? The electoral vote ended in a tie. And the U.S. Constitution says that if the Electoral College vote ends in a tie, the House of Representatives chooses the winner. Number 2, how did Hamilton influence the outcome of the election? This is probably the most interesting part of the lesson. Hamilton chose his rival, Jefferson, over his enemy, Aaron Burr. Hamilton was a very influential Federalist. He was probably their leader by this point. In 1800, George Washington was dead. John Adams had lost the election. He was no longer a leader of the Federalists. Hamilton was now the leader of the Federalists. So Hamilton goes to Congress after the electoral vote ends in a tie, and he convinces the Federalists in Congress that Jefferson is the better man for the job. Hamilton had respect for Jefferson. They had worked together on George Washington's cabinet. Yes, they had disagreements, but they had respect for one another. Hamilton knew Jefferson was a smart man. He wasn't dangerous like his hated political enemy, Aaron Burr. Aaron Burr and Hamilton had a long history of problems. They had written letters back and forth to one another, accusing each other of, rude treatment at dinner parties, and they had called each other names and been called out on it. This had gotten to a very serious, hated political rivalry, and it's going to end in an amazing manner when the two men square off in a duel. We'll get to that shortly. Take a look at the Electoral College map. What section of the country did John Adams get most of his support from? The orange states on the map represent states that Adams won, and you can see that Adams, the Federalist candidate, had most of his support from the north. On the map, you can see that Jefferson had more support from the South. However, you can also see that Jefferson won some middle and northern states like Pennsylvania and New York. So Jefferson wins the election, and it's going to really have a huge impact on the history of politics in the United States. We're going to page 2 on OneNote. Scroll down on OneNote. Here's where the story gets interesting. You can see it says Burr kills Hamilton in a duel. On page 2, let's take a look at these bullets and answer the next question. I believe it's question 4. All right, answer question 4 based on the reading. Pausing the video, and you guys should get working. Welcome back. Before we go over number 4, let's talk about the House deciding the election. You can see the House of Representatives chose Thomas Jefferson as our nation's third president. Jefferson's on Mount Rushmore. He's a 2-term president. He was a great president. His presidency began in a very controversial manner. Hamilton played a key role in choosing Jefferson. He gives him his support. He disliked Jefferson, but he chose him rather than Aaron Burr, who he truly hated. After the election, the Federalist Party begins to fade away. This is the end of the Federalist Party as we know it. No more Federalist presidents. They begin to lose many congressional elections. And by the 1830s, the Federalist Party is gone. There will be new political parties that are born over the next few decades. In 1804, the Federalist Party was further weakened when their leader, Alexander Hamilton, is killed in a duel with his enemy, Aaron Burr. Before we get to the duel, let's summarize number 4. What happened to the Federalists after the election of 1800? If you have not answered this question yet, pause the video. Do it now. We're back. So the Federalist Party began to fade away. What does that mean if a political party fades away? A lot of the members of the party would split up. They would form smaller sects and smaller parties. The birth of new parties took a while to develop. Not all Federalists leave overnight, but they start losing elections. The Federalists lose elections. No more Federalist presidents. And then, huge blow to the Federalists, Hamilton is killed in 1804. And this really spells the end for the Federalists. because after Washington and Adams were president, Hamilton was next in line. He was a future star. He would be the next Federalist to win an election and become president. Most likely after Jefferson he would have run. It never happens. He's killed in a duel with Aaron Burr in 1804. Now, on your worksheet, you have a great video, one of my favorites of the year. This video here is a reenactment of the Hamilton-Burr duel as if it was covered by ESPN. I'll pause. I want you to watch the video, and we'll come back and talk. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the video. A couple of really interesting things about the duel. Duels were used when two men, usually upper class, had a score to settle. If they had been talking trash, making fun of each other, disrespecting each other, a dignified way to settle an argument or fight like that would be a duel. Most duels ended when the men showed up. Like if your friend calls you out to fight up at the schoolyard, a lot of times by just simply showing up, you've proven to people, hey, I'm tough, I would have fought you, but there's no need, we're cool, right? Many duels ended that way. In this case, the two men decide to square off. They would, measure off their distance and take a couple of paces, turn around when told to draw their guns. Hamilton did not intend to kill Burr. Most people think he fired into the air above Burr on purpose. Burr, on the other hand, intended to shoot Hamilton. He did not miss. He hit him in the body. I believe he hit a major organ, and within a day or so, Hamilton was dead. Dueling was legal in some states. That's why the men traveled to New Jersey to duel. They were both from New York, but they traveled to New Jersey to carry out this showdown. Aaron Burr was vice president at the time. It's pretty amazing. The vice president of the United States killed a man in a duel. He was charged with murder, however, never found guilty. Charges were dropped. His political career was over, though. He did not serve as vice president for Jefferson's second term. Aaron Burr's political career basically ends in disgrace because he killed Hamilton. At the bottom of page 2, let's move on to these notes. I've got them in bullets, so stay with me. What are the effects of this election? Number 1, it's the first election ever where one political party replaces another. The Democratic Republicans replace the Federalists. Jefferson moves into the White House, replacing John Adams. The Federalist Party begins to lose power. They soon faded away. It's the end of the Federalist Party as we know it. And this is one of the reasons that this election of 1800, Thomas Jefferson's first election, is called a political revolution. It's a peaceful revolution. There was no, forced overthrow of the exiting party, but instead it's a major change. Revolution means change. This is the beginning of Democrat-Republican control of the United States government for more than 20 years. Another major change because of the election of 1800, the way we choose our vice president. The 12th Amendment was passed soon after the election of 1800, creating a separate ballot for the president and the vice president. This is not how we choose our vice president today. They wound up changing this again. Today, the president chooses who he wants to run with. There is no ballot for vice president. They're elected together. But the original Constitution gave the vice presidency to the guy that finished second. Then the 12th Amendment changed it to where there were separate ballots for president and vice president. It's been changed again where the current system, where the presidential candidate chooses his running mate, was put in place. Hopefully you enjoyed this video lesson. I want to finish up with a summary of today's lesson by having you guys go answer the AIM. Before you do that, a couple of reminders. Make sure that you are uploading worksheets on OneNote during lower traffic times, early in the morning, later at night, so that you're able to get the worksheets copied before I send out the reminds with the daily instructions for our lessons. Also, I am not seeing everybody completing these assignments on OneNote. If you are still listening to the video, you are probably one of the people that are completing the assignments on OneNote. Great job. This is an interesting topic. Please feel free to email me any questions, even if it's something random like, hey, Mr. Gates, what was up with that duel? Why did they solve a dispute like that? I want to hear from you guys. If you're watching the video still right now, comment in that question that you email me. Hey, Mr. Gates, I watched the whole video and I have a question for you. I want to hear from you guys. I want to be able to answer your questions. I want to be able to help. I know this is a weird way to learn new information, but hopefully you enjoyed it. Have a great day, and I'll be back in touch soon.